Hi all, and thanks for being with me. Just another conversation about a world that is kind of in the shit. So, need to talk about America, the Northern America, the bit of America that sits between Canada and Mexico, because that part of America is stuffed. Now, there's been lots of discussions recently about the way the United States has decided to elect Donald Trump, an issue in and of itself, the fact that they have overwhelmingly supported a Republican as the President of the United States, even though that is Donald Trump, and how the rest of the world has kind of chosen to respond around that epic decision. And the way that the world has responded is probably with a little bit of skepticism.
Around the world reacting to the election results. Let's go to our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell. Good morning to you, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, Robin. I think presidents and prime ministers have been tripping over themselves this morning to try and send congratulations to Donald Trump. But here in Europe, I think leaders are bracing for what another Trump term could mean after threats to end military aid to Ukraine and withdraw US support for NATO allies who don't spend enough on defense. Trump has repeatedly said that he'd end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours if he's re-elected. President Zelensky appealing to Trump today to maintain support. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov saying he's not aware of Putin plans to congratulate Trump, calling the US an unfriendly country. I think China also is going to have concerns after threats on tariffs and the dangers of a trade war. Parts of South America and Mexico too are going to have cause to worry about Trump's threats about migration and also about tariffs. The City of Love, however, bucking the trend, with the mayor of Paris writing, "This is bad news for the world, democracies, Europe, climate, women and Ukraine." But there have, of course, been genuine well-wishers. Israeli leader Netanyahu celebrating what he calls a huge victory and a new beginning, and Hungary's Viktor Orban calling this the greatest comeback in US political history.
A little bit of fear and a lot of, I think, uncertainty about how this is going to manifest itself in the future. Now, with the nomination of someone like RFK for health, when one thinks about health as being a place whereby someone with a medical degree might be really handy, someone who understands the nuances of the medical profession and science in particular, and how we use science to be able to inform us about appropriate decisions that need to be made in relation to things like our health, and how important it is that we have people who are prepared to listen to others, who have a scientific knowledge, who use scientific methods in order to arrive at appropriate conclusions that can inform the rest of us about what it is we could be doing about our health. Now, granted, the United States is an unhealthy place. And I'm not saying just the United States, I know Australia is as well. And there's a lot of questions that probably need to be raised about the type of things, preservatives that we put in food and whatever. But to argue that fluoride is harming the population and should be taken out of water is kind of going a little step too far, because it reminded me of a time, in fact, in Australia when they first introduced fluoride. I haven't got the exact date here, but when they first introduced fluoride in Australia, there were the anti-fluoride people were suggesting that perhaps fluoride would cause our teeth to grow longer, that there would be some form of deformity around our teeth, given that fluoride, the idea of fluoride was to keep our teeth healthier rather than have them eroded by some of the materials that wind up in water, given that water flies through our atmosphere, lands on the ground, that particularly as it comes through the atmosphere, it collects a lot of toxic stuff that sort of sits in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide, for example. So the idea of fluoride was to help to clean it up. And I reckon if you want clean water, perhaps just try buying spring water if you're concerned about what it is that you're drinking. So fluoride is an issue. Who knows what's going to happen around that? And then, of course, there was this nomination of one of my most favourite politicians, Matt Gaetz, because it is always important to ensure that for someone like Attorney General, we have somebody who abides by the law, who is squeaky clean, who doesn't have any skeletons in his or her closet. And unfortunately, though, with Matt, there's quite a few of those little skeletons lurking around, clanging at the doors, letting people know that they that they're there and that they are going to influence, I guess, perhaps his final get the Senate to agree to this man. You know, it's hard to understand how they will, given that he's developed so many enemies within the Republican Party in itself, that there'll be people there who'll be just chafing at the bit, hoping like hell that they can actually vote against his nomination so that he doesn't take on that job. And there are other terrible people that have been nominated as well. So there's little dispute that these people, some of them, should not be nominated for these positions. There's particularly 4 of them, I guess. This guy from Hegsbeth, or whatever his name is, from who's in charge of one of the largest organisations in the United States, namely the Defence Force. No experience in that area. A weekend commentator on or anchor on Fox News, and that's about his only claim to fame. He did serve, but there again, in the United States, it seems that most people served at some point. So, and then there's is it Gabbard, the person that has been Tulsi Gabbard, that's been given, correct me if I'm wrong, who's been nominated for looking after the intelligence services, the 16 intelligence services, however many there are, and she, it has been said, is a puppet of Putin.
He has selected former Democratic Congresswoman turned Trump supporter Tulsi Gabbard as his pick to be Director of National Intelligence. If confirmed, that would mean Gabbard would oversee the 18 agencies that make up the entire U.S. intelligence apparatus, including overseeing the CIA. Why this announcement is now sending shockwaves includes Gabbard seen by many as an apologist for brutal foreign powers, including the leader of Syria, the same leader, that man, who has used chemical weapons on his own citizens. Gabbard even traveled to Syria for what she called at the time a fact-finding mission and met with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. She later responded to questions about that trip with statements like this.
Do you think Assad is our enemy?
Assad is not the enemy of the United States because Syria does not pose a direct threat to the United States.
The man used chemical weapons on his people. And then there is this from National Security Affairs expert Tom Nichols, writing for The Atlantic in a new piece, the following. She has no qualifications as an intelligence professional, literally none. And her appointment would be a threat to the security of the United States. Sir Tulsi Gabbard, what are your thoughts this morning?
Well, I thought it was the worst cabinet level appointment in history until they then heard about the Matt Gaetz appointment. So now we're going to see whether the American Senate can stand up and reject 2 people who are totally unqualified, unfit professionally, and really lacking in the moral characteristics, the character that you need to hold these jobs. I think this vote should be 100-0 against both of them.
To serve as Director of National Intelligence in Trump's new cabinet. She, of course, played a pretty key role in this election campaign, you'd have to say, when she endorsed Donald Trump. So I suppose this appointment was not exactly a surprise.
Not a surprise, and she's part of the transition team. She'll do a fabulous job. There's no one I'm truly worried about right now that President Trump has appointed. Everyone's going to do a great job. President Trump is surrounding himself with strong leaders, amazing people. They're going to get in and get the job done. They're tough.
And possibly a spy, so the allegations go. So then you've got to think, well, okay, what really is happening here? What are they doing? What's Trump really intending to do? And my guess is that on this particular occasion, Trump believes that he can pull apart everything that represents the deep state as they've identified it, which is simply the DC administration, government administration, the FBI, intelligence services, health departments, Department of Justice, and so on. So he can find ways, as he promised, I hasten to add, that he will destroy all of them. And then the question remains, which I have not seen the answer to, and that is, what remains once they have been ripped apart? So once you lose all of the people, the good people within any of these services, whether they be generals or majors or people in defence, whether they be leaders in the Department of Justice, whether they be scientists in the area of health, then if all those people leave, what do you have left? And what are you going to replace them with? Or do you just not replace them at all? So things like the things that the FBI do, which is investigating all sorts of incredible and terrible crime like trafficking of children, trafficking of women, drug abuse and so forth. What are you going to do with those services if all of those people, those investigators and so forth, choose to resign? Or if those people choose that they haven't got the degree of allegiance and loyalty that is required to support Trump. If they've posted something on Twitter or on TikTok that is anti-Trump, do those people lose their jobs? What's going to happen once all of that stuff is ripped aside? There's no thought about what it's going to be replaced with. Or is it simply going to be replaced with a dictatorial edict, as we see in Hungary, in Russia, in any other authoritarian or dictatorship governments? Is that what we're going to wind up with? There'll be this vacuum between the leader and the people. And there won't be any pushback whatsoever. Once that vacuum's created, there won't be any pushback at all towards the leader or the government. That the populace will cause to be silent because they'll lack information, which is what happens in those countries. And those people who are prepared to provide that information, namely journalists, they'll be targeted as well. So is that where the United States is heading? I believe that it probably is, and those people that supported Trump at some point will decide, wrong decision, bad move. But by the time they make that decision, it probably will be too late. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Remember to subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications. In the meantime, think about what I've said. What do you think? Take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.